The king who melted before France. In the annals of European history, few kings embody tragedy like Charles VI of France. Born into splendor, crowned as a child, and celebrated as the well-beloved, he seemed destined for greatness. Yet behind the velvet robes and glittering crowns, a storm of madness brewed. Over decades, Charles's mind and body betrayed him, leaving a fractured kingdom in his wake. From fiery court spectacles to murderous political intrigues, the story of Charles VI is one of brilliance undone by fragility. A king who melted before the eyes of his people, both literally and metaphorically. 1. Birth of a fragile heir. In 1368, amid the marble halls and painted ceilings of the Hotel St. Paul in Paris, Charles VI entered the world. Son of Charles V, known as the Wise, and Jeanne de Bourbon, whose bloodline traced centuries of Catelan kings, the infant was destined for the throne. France, however, was no idyllic nursery. The 100 Years' War still scarred the land, and plague had hollowed villages. From the first breath, Charles was surrounded by tutors, priests, and courtiers who whispered of destiny. Every gesture and word carried weight. He was the golden child of a wounded kingdom, meant to restore glory. Yet even as a baby, the shadow of France's fractured peace hung over him, a silent reminder that strength would be demanded far beyond his capacity. 2. Coronation at Reims. In 1380, at just 11, Charles rode into Reims, the sacred heart of French kingship. The cathedral towers seemed to stretch toward heaven, the stained glass glowing with firelight. Kneeling at the altar, the crown felt impossibly heavy on his narrow shoulders as holy oil poured over him. Trumpets blared, choirs thundered, and the people called him Charles le Bien-Aimé, the well-beloved. Yet among the shadows, the nobles whispered doubts. Fragile eyes, soft voice, and timid demeanor, the boy seemed ill-equipped to command armies hardened by decades of war. The crown gleamed, but France's future was now bound to a child whose brilliance would be tested in unimaginable ways. 3. Regency of greedy uncles. The crown sat on a child's head, but power passed immediately to his uncles, the Dukes of Burgundy, Berry, and Anjou. They promised to safeguard the kingdom until Charles came of age, but treated France like a personal treasure trove. Gold meant for soldiers, and starving peasants disappeared into jeweled banquets and silk-draped palaces. By 1382, Paris erupted in the horror riots, crowds destroying tax records and royal emblems. Soldiers responded with steel, and the young king watched helplessly as his people were slaughtered in his name. The love the people bore for Charles was theoretical. Their hatred for his uncle's greed foreshadowed the turbulence that would mark his reign. 4. The young king takes command. By 1388, Charles reached his majority and declared an end to the regency. He restored the Marmousets, capable advisors who served his father, cutting wasteful spending and balancing taxes. Merchants could breathe, farmers dared hope, and his popularity soared. The courts and foreign powers alike saw promise in the young king. For a fleeting moment, France seemed poised for renewal under Charles's steady hand. But unseen, the first cracks of madness began forming, a storm gathering silently in the corners of his mind, threatening to undo all that he had built. 5. The first madness and the ride into insanity. In 1392, during a military campaign near Le Mans, something inside Charles snapped. Believing his men were traitors, he attacked friend and servant alike with sword in hand, foaming and raving. The king, protector of France, became a danger to his own, and it required multiple knights to restrain him. From that day, Charles was no longer merely a ruler, he was a haunted man, subject to sudden storms of insanity that no prayer, physician, or priest could assuage. His beloved crown had become a weight his mind could not bear. 6. The king who forgot his own crown. Following the Le Mans incident, Charles's mental state deteriorated. On some days, he forgot he was king, staring blankly at courtiers, asking, "Who is this king you speak of?" On others, he roamed the palace halls like a wolf, clawing at walls, tearing his clothing, and howling at the moon. Queen Isabeau, his young bride, tried to calm him, only to be seen as an enemy at times. The palace was a place of constant dread, its halls echoing the questions that plagued France. How could a kingdom survive when its king did not remember he ruled? 7. Fire and Tragedy, the Bal d'Ardents. January 1393 brought celebration and horror. At a masquerade hosted by Queen Isabeau, Charles and 6 nobles donned costumes of pitch, resin, and flax to appear as wild men. When a torch ignited the flammable attire, flames consumed 4 nobles. Charles narrowly survived thanks to a quick-thinking duchess, but the hall reeked of burning flesh, and the spectacle became a warning. The king's madness now ruled not only his mind but also the court's very sapi. Fire and folly intertwined, marking a kingdom where joy and terror coexisted uneasily. 8. Politics amid madness. As Charles's illness deepened, France fractured politically. The Armagnacs, led by his brother the Duke of Orleans, and the Burgundians, led by John the Fearless, manipulated the king's episodes for power. Cities declared loyalty to one faction or the other, while peasants endured new taxes to fund endless feuds. Every lapse in Charles's mind became a weapon in a deadly chess game, and the crown itself ceased to symbolize unity. In the early 15th century, France was not a kingdom, but a battlefield where madness dictated the laws of men and the lives of millions. 9. Murder, betrayal, and the Treaty of Troyes. The murder of the Duke of Orleans in 1407 by John the Fearless sparked civil war. Charles, lost in cycles of insanity, was powerless to intervene. By 1420, the Treaty of Troyes dealt the final blow. His son was disinherited, and England's Henry V was named heir to the French crown, married to Charles's daughter. France gasped in horror. The well-beloved was no more. Charles VI had become the mad, a king whose weakness allowed foreign powers and internal rivals to carve the kingdom apart. 10. The Melting King and Legacy. The final years of Charles VI combined madness and grotesque physical decline. Fevers and sores consumed him, and witnesses described a body seemingly dissolving, peeling away like wax under a flame. He died on October 21, 1422, in the Hotel St. Paul, his body ruined, breath shallow, and the kingdom shattered. His funeral was quiet, stripped of pomp, as Parisians crossed themselves and whispered that the curse had ended. Buried at St. Denis among kings of legend, Charles left France fractured and bleeding, remembered not as the well-beloved, but as the king who melted, mind, body, and realm dissolving together. His reign became a warning. Sometimes the greatest danger to a nation is its own ruler, and even a crown cannot protect a kingdom from madness.